and welcome, my dear listeners. I am your host, Ryan. If this is your very first time tuning in to Speak Up, we're so glad you're here with us. And if you've been listening for a while, thank you for coming back. It truly means a lot that you keep choosing to spend your time here. We'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button because it really helps this podcast reach more people who, just like you, want to grow and improve in their English journey. Today, we're talking about something that might feel a little unusual at first. The idea of speaking alone, out loud, as a way to discover your own voice. It's called the Monologue method, and it has the power to completely shift the way you practice.
And I am your co-host, Priya. Yes, and what makes this topic so important is that many people don't always have someone to practice with, right? That can feel lonely or even discouraging. But the beautiful thing about monologues is that they let you create practice for yourself, anytime, anywhere. This isn't about being perfect. It's about opening the door to your own thoughts and letting your voice fill the space. So by the end of this episode, you'll see how something as simple as speaking alone can actually become one of the most powerful steps you take in learning.
And I think what really matters here is the freedom it gives you. No waiting for a teacher, no scheduling with a partner, just you and your words. It's almost like giving yourself permission to explore, to try, to stumble, and to get back up again without any pressure. That's why we're so excited to guide you through this idea step by step. Because once you experience the shift of speaking your thoughts out loud, even in an empty room, you'll realize that progress doesn't only happen in classrooms, it happens in those quiet, personal moments too.
Exactly. And as we go through today's conversation, I want you to really feel that you're not just listening from the outside, but that you're actually inside the experience with us. We'll take it slowly, gently, so you can sense how monologues work in real life. By the end, you'll not only understand the method, but you'll also feel more connected to your own voice. So stay with us, lean into the quiet spaces, and let's explore this together.
You know, there's something almost unsettling the very first time you try to speak when no one else is around. You open your mouth, and suddenly the room feels bigger, quieter, and almost too still. At first, it's like your own voice doesn't quite belong there. It echoes back to you, and you think, is this really how I sound? That strangeness can make you hesitate, like maybe you should just stop before it even starts. But here's the thing. That exact moment, that little bit of discomfort is the doorway. Once you take that first step, once you allow yourself to say the words out loud into the silence, the awkwardness slowly begins to lose its power.
Yes, I can almost picture that moment. You stand there, maybe in your room, and the silence feels almost heavy, like it's waiting for you. Then you speak. Just a few words, and it feels almost too loud. Like the sound, it doesn't match the stillness. And that's where the hesitation creeps in. But if you breathe and keep going, you notice something. The silence doesn't fight you. It doesn't judge you. It simply makes space for your words. And in that space, something very small begins to shift. It's not about perfection. It's about giving yourself permission to let your voice exist, even when no one else is there to hear it.
And the funny part is, at first you might even laugh a little at yourself because it feels so unusual. But then, after a few moments, you realize the sound of your own voice isn't something to avoid. It's something to grow familiar with. The pauses, the hesitations, even the mistakes, they're all part of that first layer. It's like standing in front of a mirror for the first time in a long while. You see yourself differently. You hear yourself differently, and it might feel uncomfortable, but the longer you stay there, the more natural it becomes. That first small act of speaking alone is like planting a seed. It looks so small in the beginning, but it carries the potential to grow into something much larger.
I love that you said it's like a seed, because in the beginning, it feels fragile, doesn't it? Almost like it could break if you press too hard. But seeds aren't weak, they're beginnings. And that's exactly what happens when you speak into the quiet. Each pause, each breath, each word, They're like roots finding their way into the soil. You may not see the progress in that first moment, but something is already taking shape. And the beauty is, no one else needs to be there. You don't need an audience to start. All you need is yourself, your voice, and the willingness to let it exist.
And once you step into that space, something else begins to happen. The silence that once felt intimidating slowly turns into a companion. Instead of resisting it, you start to lean into it. The room doesn't feel as empty anymore. It feels like a safe container where your words can land. You notice the rhythm of your breathing, the rise and fall of your sentences, even the little slips and stumbles. And over time, you realize that those so-called mistakes are actually proof that you're alive in the language, moving with it, shaping it. That first awkward step becomes the foundation for every step that comes after.
And it's in that foundation where you start to see the real change. Because once you've spoken in the stillness, even just for a minute, you've already broken the barrier. You've done the hardest part, starting. After that, the silence no longer feels like a wall, but more like an open field. You can walk across it, you can run, you can even stumble and fall, and it will still hold you. That's the gift of beginning alone. It shows you that your voice doesn't need permission, it doesn't need approval, it just needs space. And once you realize that, the fear begins to fade, and what's left is freedom.
You know, something interesting happens once you get past that very first layer of awkwardness. At the start, your words come out in little pieces, short, broken, almost hesitant. But if you keep going, slowly you start to notice they begin connecting. One thought spills into the next, and the silence that once felt so heavy now becomes a space where your ideas can breathe. It's almost like your mind begins to adjust, realizing, oh, this isn't strange anymore, this is normal. And in that moment, your words stop being scattered fragments and begin forming something closer to a flow.
Yes, exactly. It's like when you're first learning to ride a bike. Those first pedals feel shaky, but once you find balance, the movement carries itself forward. Speaking alone works the same way. At first, every pause feels like a mistake. Every gap feels like a failure. But then, slowly, you begin to notice the pauses turn into rhythm. They're not interruptions anymore. They're part of the way you speak. And then the words, they don't feel forced. They start arriving on their own, almost as if your thoughts are stepping into line, one after the other, ready to be spoken.
And the most powerful part is how subtle it is. You don't even realize it right away. You just notice that suddenly 2 minutes have gone by, and you've been speaking without even thinking, what do I say next? That flow is such a quiet shift inside the mind. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It sneaks up on you, turning what once felt like effort into something more natural. And in that flow, you begin to hear your own rhythm. Not the rhythm of hesitation, but the rhythm of expression. That's when silence starts to feel alive, almost like it's supporting you rather than working against you.
I love that you said it whispers because that's exactly how it feels. It's not a dramatic change. It's not like suddenly everything becomes easy. It's more like a soft unfolding. The silence begins to carry your voice instead of swallowing it. And that's when the real magic happens. When you're not forcing yourself anymore, you're just speaking. The words come, sometimes imperfect, sometimes beautifully clear, but always moving forward. And in those moments, you realize that hesitation isn't the enemy. Hesitation is simply part of the rhythm that helps you find your voice.
And once you notice that rhythm, it's almost addictive. You want to keep going because it feels lighter than before. You no longer hear only the broken pieces. You hear sentences, you hear meaning. You hear yourself making sense in a way you didn't expect. That's such a powerful realization. It's proof that your mind is adjusting, that your voice is learning how to carry itself. And each time you experience that shift, it builds a little more confidence, a little more trust in your ability to keep speaking. even if no one is there to listen.
And I think that's the quiet victory of this whole process. It's not about perfection, not about getting every word right. It's about feeling that transformation inside, when silence is no longer empty but full of your voice, your thoughts, your rhythm. That shift makes you feel less like you're practicing and more like you're simply existing in the language. And that's when it really begins to feel natural. That's when you understand that the flow is already inside you. It just needed space to come alive.
The thing about practice is that it never feels dramatic in the moment. You speak for a few minutes today, maybe tomorrow, and it feels like nothing has really changed. But what's actually happening is more like building a wall, brick by brick. Each word you speak is a brick. Each short practice is another layer. On its own, one brick doesn't look like much, but over time, you step back and realize you've built something solid, a structure that didn't exist before. And that's the beauty of small, consistent attempts. They don't shout their progress, but they carry you forward, quietly, steadily.
Yes, and I think that's what so many people overlook. They expect growth to feel obvious, but most of the time it's invisible at first. You speak a little every day, and it feels like drops of water on stone. But we all know what water does, right? With enough time, it shapes even the hardest surface. Daily practice is the same. Every minute you give, every word you allow yourself to say, is carving out a path. It may feel small, but it's working quietly underneath. And then one day, almost without warning, you notice the change. You hear yourself differently. You feel stronger.
And I love that image of water because it's so true. The effort feels soft, almost too small to matter, but that's exactly why it works. It doesn't overwhelm you. It doesn't demand perfection. It just asks for presence, day after day. Imagine those minutes as threads weaving into a fabric. At first, it's thin, fragile even, but the more you weave, the stronger it becomes, until suddenly you realize you're wrapped in something that supports you. That strength doesn't come from one big effort. It comes from the gentle repetition of showing up.
And showing up, even when it feels boring or unimportant, is where the real strength is built. Think about it. No one sees a tree growing day by day, but we all know it is. The same thing happens when you practice consistently. It's quiet growth. You don't see it in the moment, but it's happening in the roots. It's happening in the structure. And then one day, maybe after weeks or months, you look back and realize the silence you once feared now feels natural. The words that once felt heavy now come with ease. That's the reward of daily practice. Steady, unshakable growth.
And when that moment comes, when you finally notice the change, it almost surprises you. You realize that the strength was never built in a single day. It was built in all those unnoticed minutes, the times when you wanted to stop but kept going anyway, the times when you spoke just a little, even if it felt pointless. Those moments are what create the foundation. And what once felt invisible now feels solid, like ground you can actually stand on. That's the quiet power of practice. It builds you piece by piece until suddenly you're standing taller than before.
And that's what makes the journey so meaningful. Because in the end, it's not about the single moment of success. It's about the layers of effort that led you there. Every word you spoke, every pause you embraced became part of the structure. And that structure isn't fragile. It's something you can rely on, something that holds you steady as you keep moving forward. It's the invisible progress that becomes visible when you least expect it. And once you've built that kind of strength, it doesn't just stay in the practice, it follows you everywhere.
Priya, one of the hardest parts for me when I first started speaking alone was that inner voice of doubt. It was always whispering things like, what if this sounds wrong? What if I mess up? And honestly, those thoughts can feel so heavy, almost like chains holding you back. I'd start a sentence, then stop halfway because I felt silly, or I worried that even in an empty room, someone would somehow hear me and judge me. But here's the strange thing. The more I allowed myself to just speak, even awkwardly, the more I realized that those fears didn't actually have any real power. It was just me fighting my own mind.
Oh, Ryan, I can completely relate to that. I used to feel embarrassed even when I was alone. It's funny, isn't it? There's nobody around, yet the pressure feels real. I remember when standing in front of my mirror, trying to say just a few lines in English. My heart was racing as if I was on stage in front of hundreds of people. And then I thought, wait a minute, why am I so afraid? There's no one here but me. That's when it clicked. When you're alone, there's no gaze, no audience. The only person judging is yourself. And once I started letting go of that self-judgment, I felt this beautiful kind of freedom. It was like opening a window in a room that had been closed for too long.
Exactly, Priya. That freedom is so powerful. And I think the moment you realize mistakes don't really matter when you're speaking alone, you begin to release so much pressure. Like, I used to mispronounce words all the time. At first, I'd stop and feel frustrated, almost like I failed. But then I started laughing at myself instead. I would say the word wrong, then correct it, then repeat it 5 more times until it felt natural. And because no one was listening, it didn't matter. Slowly, the fear of being wrong started to fade. And once that fear loosened its grip, I could feel my confidence growing.
Yes, that's the beauty of it, Ryan. When there's no audience, mistakes lose their weight. They become just small bumps in the road instead of walls blocking your way. I started treating my mistakes like little teachers. Every slip of the tongue showed me what I needed to improve. And instead of feeling ashamed, I began to feel curious. Oh, so that's how it sounds. Let me try again. And soon the fear of mistakes transformed into excitement. Excitement that I was learning, that I was growing, even in those messy, imperfect moments.
I love how you put that, Priya. Mistakes as teachers. It's so true. And honestly, once you start seeing mistakes as part of the process, speaking alone becomes liberating instead of intimidating. I think of it like releasing a heavy backpack I had been carrying for years. The doubts, the fear, the self-consciousness, they all start to fall away. And in that space, what's left is just your voice, raw and real, shaping itself into something stronger every day. That realization, it changes everything.
Beautifully said, Ryan. It's almost like stepping into a new world where your voice belongs fully to you. And in that world, there's no punishment for getting it wrong. There's only progress, only movement forward. The barriers we thought were so solid, the fear of judgment, the fear of sounding strange, they dissolve when we realize they existed only in our heads. And once they're gone, speaking alone doesn't feel lonely anymore. It feels empowering, almost joyful, because every word you speak is a step toward the confident speaker you're becoming.
You know, Priya, what really surprises me is how something that begins with just single words, maybe even clumsy ones, slowly turns into stories. I've noticed that when I talk to myself, I don't just say, book, read, good. After a while, it becomes, I read a book today, and it made me think about, and then suddenly, I'm not just practicing words, I'm building a whole world. It feels like the voice inside me is stretching, getting braver, and saying, hey, let's keep going, let's explore more. Honestly, it feels less like practice and more like discovering a new side of myself.
Yes, Ryan, I completely get what you mean. At first, speaking alone feels almost mechanical, like repeating pieces of a puzzle without knowing the full picture. But then, without realizing, the puzzle starts to form. One day, you're describing your morning tea. The next, you're imagining conversations, telling little stories, even giving advice to your future self. It's such a shift from silence that feels heavy to a voice that feels alive. And I think that's where the real growth happens, when you stop worrying about right or wrong and just let the words flow like water.
Exactly, Priya. And you know what? I think this is the moment where people realize that speaking alone isn't emptiness at all. It's not a sign of being lost. It's actually rehearsal. Every sentence you build when no one's watching becomes a quiet investment in your future confidence. I mean, think about it. Athletes trained alone before they face a crowd. Musicians practice their notes before the concert. Why shouldn't language learners treat their voice the same way? That's when the idea of monologue transforms. It stops being practice and starts becoming expression.
That's beautifully said, Ryan. And I love the way you compared it to training because, yes, it is training, but it's also freedom. When you're alone, you're not restricted by fear or grammar rules or people correcting you. You can wander with your thoughts. You can start with, I went to the market today, and end up imagining a whole conversation with the shopkeeper, describing the colors, the smells, the little details. And in that moment, you're not learning English in a stiff way. You're living in it. You're breathing through it. That's the true transformation.
And maybe that's the most powerful gift, realizing that your voice doesn't need an audience to be meaningful. The stories you tell yourself, the imagined conversations, the little rehearsals, they all add up. And then, one day, when you're actually speaking with someone else, the voice that once stumbled suddenly moves with rhythm, with ease. You feel that quiet confidence, not loud, not boastful, but steady, like an anchor inside you. The monologue you once thought was just practice becomes your bridge to real expression.
Yes, Ryan, and what a beautiful bridge that is. I think the best part is that it changes how you see yourself. Instead of thinking, I'm someone who struggles, you begin to think, I'm someone who can speak, who can create, who can express. That shift is life-changing because the voice that once whispered with doubt is now carrying you forward step by step with strength. And that's the real discovery, that speaking alone was never about filling silence. It was about uncovering the confident voice that was waiting inside you all along.
And as we come to the end of today's episode, I just want to take a moment to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Every time you join us here, you give us something so valuable, your time, and we never take that for granted. Our goal has always been to make sure that each minute you spend listening helps you grow, helps you reflect, and most importantly, helps you feel a little more confident on your English journey. If even one example, one phrase, or one thought today made you feel inspired to keep practicing, then I believe this time together was worth it.
And I couldn't agree more, Ryan. To all of you listening, whether you've been with us for a long time or you're here for the very first time, thank you for sharing this moment with us. We try our best to make your time valuable, and your presence truly means the world. Remember, your voice matters, your effort matters, and step by step, you're building something stronger than you realize. So please keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and carry this quiet confidence forward into your everyday life. Until next time, take care and keep speaking.